You're listening to the On Call Empath Show.
All right, guys, we are back, and this one is the Elite Coaches series, and I have a elite guest with me from a continuation from a past episode. Her name is Dr. Rafa, and she is a clinical psychologist. And if you guys want to know all about narcissism, this is the person to go to. Welcome back to the show. How you doing?
Hi, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, doing good. I got a lot of good feedback from the previous episodes, and let's face it, if you've been through it yourself and now you're helping the world and you have a very thriving practice in New Jersey. And so let's just start off and tell us how you kind of got into all of this work, just for the audience.
Right. Well, I started my solo practice back in 2009 in New Jersey, and I opened more locations and expanded because, as you know, my field is booming and very, necessary. So I ended up opening 2 other locations. So I have 3 total, 1 in Philadelphia and 2 in New Jersey. And, I always wanted to be a psychologist throughout my life. So I made it happen.
Yeah.
And I ended up specializing with children and families, and personality disorders obviously come through with people. So that ended up being a niche area that I ended up just specializing in and knowing a lot about personally and professionally.
Yeah, I mean, back when I was growing up, there wasn't too many things to read and go on the internet and learn about narcissism and all of this. So you guys stick around till the end. I'm going to give you some good resources, but I wish there was someone like you around so you could relate with what I was going through. And, a lot of my audience members probably don't know is, I've been through narcissist abuse myself pretty much my whole life. And I've been quiet about it out of shame, guilt. And so what I want to do in this, episode, this special episode, is kind of break down the stages of actually going through meeting a narcissist where we miss the red flags, the honeymoon period, the gaslighting, the stonewall, the love bombing, all these terms that you hear thrown around. I mean, because you are so specialized in your field, you're going to be able to explain this to the audience a lot better than anyone else. So let's just start off. When we meet somebody, whether it's in a relationship, dating, or a family member, as an empath, we gravitate towards somebody like that because we want their validation. We're looking for something. In your opinion, when you were going through it way back in, before you met this narcissist, you had no idea, I had no idea. But then after that honeymoon period, that's when the narc starts to take off the mask. And so I want you to talk about that to anyone that's out there that's maybe living with one or maybe left a narcissist and trying to make sense of all this stuff, because we can throw the term around, but unless they meet a certain criteria, which you're going to describe to us, what really institute a narcissist to be like looking at somebody and these are all the traits? Is there something concrete?
Mm-hmm. Well, in our diagnostic and statistical manual, there has to be, criteria met. It has to be simultaneous criteria to be pathological. Because, the term is thrown around like, oh, he's so selfish or she's so narcissistic. But what threads through all the different types of narcissists is a sense of entitlement, lack of empathy. There's grandiosity, and kind of that it's all about me at the very end of the day. And there's different subtypes. I may have mentioned them before. There's the seductive type, the know-it-all type, bullying type, aggressive type. So it isn't just the celebrity that's just, Hollywood celebrity. They, hide in plain sight, and they're very charismatic and charming. They're often very intelligent. Sometimes there's a fine line between narcissists and antisocial personality disorder, especially with the limited empathy. Like I've seen people who have narcissistic personality disorder and they can have some empathy, but it's really hard to tell if it's genuine. And they're very manipulative. They can be very manipulative. Like when you meet them, very, very charming, and
Yeah.
they pull you into this web of
Mhm.
wanting to have their approval.
Yeah. We got to be careful out there, guys, because there's a lot of people that are actors and they claim to be, empaths just to kind of get into, somebody's life and manipulate their way by labeling themselves as, an empath, a caring person, or whoever. So there's a lot of that going on. But one thing I want to ask you is, in your opinion, when you first met this person, um, what could you have done to kind of, like, back then, looking back, everything, what could somebody do to kind of be like, uh-oh, this isn't good, this is not a good sign? What are some red flags that maybe people
Right.
miss?
Yeah. So the kind of people that they attract to are caretaking individuals, sometimes codependent. And I think reflectively looking back, I cared more about, their feeling than mine, like his
Mhm.
feeling than my feelings. And I wanted to get constant approval. I put my own feelings aside. And I honestly probably felt like I was walking on eggshells a lot. Like even now clinically, if people are kind of coming in the room, like you just get that feeling, it's like hard to describe. It's like just this kind of like intuition about this person.
Yeah.
So I was very young, and obviously I know a lot now compared to then. But I would say that, like, kind of feeling worse rather than better with this person, always trying to please
Mm,
the other person. It's never enough, never good enough. The entitlement would just come through, always trying to fix things.
mhm.
So I think I would suggest that if you kind of feel like you're walking on eggshells with this person, that's always a sign.
Yeah, I mean, and some of the tactics that are used, and I've heard, I mean, people probably heard of terms like gaslighting, love bombing, and stonewalling. If you can kind of describe those things to the average person that's listening, because maybe it's the first time they heard of these things,
Mhm.
because I
Right.
know in my experience with narcissists, they're really nice in the beginning and then they get really
Oh,
nasty.
yes. Oh gosh. See, that's what happened too. That was like, it's like this Jekyll and Hyde
Yeah.
tendency. So the love bombing, like just putting you on the pedestal, like you're
Mm,
so amazing and beautiful and smart, and it's just demonstrations of affection and attention. And the cynical side doesn't come out. And there's different signs, like it's just like us against the world type of thing
mhm,
with love bombing. And that is also manipulated when you get into a fight, maybe, or an argument with this person. They use the love bombing to get you back on their side. I didn't
mhm,
mean it. I'm so sorry. You're so amazing. And it's all manipulative.
mhm.
Um, so it looks like it's love, but it's not. It's just
Yeah.
it perpetuates the cycle of abuse.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
the other thing that I've noticed with my, clients that I coach is many of them just keep going through this cycle where they keep on dating or being in the same type of environment, whether it's a boss or a relationship. They just keep attracting, and to break that cycle,
Yeah.
what would you say to somebody that's listening that tells you, like, hey, I always get the worst types of people, I always attract this type of person? Is this something that we're doing wrong, or is that just, I mean, is that an empath thing?
Um,
I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, I always try to sway away from the wrong thing, but it's like what I think it's false hope. Like it'll get better because they see the other side of this person. I know with a lot of people I work with, including myself, I'm a fixer. I want to fix things.
Yeah.
No, this time it'll be better. And especially with a PhD, I'm like, oh, I can absolutely help this person or fix this person.
Right.
So with a boss, a lot of it is just distance, getting
Mm,
distance from these
yeah.
individuals and knowing that they're not going to change. The prognosis is very poor. They
Hmm.
rarely go to therapy to have any kind of meaningful insight. So it's really just getting out of that
Mm,
denial
yeah.
because people have a lot of hope and denial that this person isn't that terrible or that bad, and they
Yeah.
they're not going to change. Yeah.
That's a good point. You guys, narcissists, I mean, there's very, very slim chance they're going to change. So if you're stuck with one, married to one, or have a boss, I mean, most likely they're going to continue with their behavior. And I mean, I, before I even, looked into narcissism, I had a boss. I was working once at a gym and I was just surrounded by arrogance. Like, I mean, narcissists, bosses, coworkers, I mean, they were all around me. And the thing I wanted to mention to you, Dr. Rafa, is that, I always put, like, I would always make excuses like, well, it pays well, or, it's not that bad. Or when I talk to one of my friends, they're like, come on, it's a job. And we would try to justify it. So I'd put these blinders on and try to make excuses. But every day after work, I'd come home and I'd be like, what the heck just happened
Yeah.
today?
Right.
And
Very
it's like every day, it's like, maybe I can just do tomorrow, maybe one more week. And I'm just every day, you don't know what you're going to run into. And it's always, you're always pushing to get this person to please them. You're always
right.
trying to do something, and it's just a vicious cycle. And the
Yep.
best thing was when I left. I
Right.
mean,
It
that
really
was
is.
my health got a lot better. I was a lot, but what would you say in that instance where people are just making excuses like, well, he does pay the bills, or
Mhm.
she does, cook me, great meals and tells me how beautiful I am. I
Yeah.
mean,
I think, yeah, I know. It's like a reality check, and it's kind of like this checking with friends and family, being honest, because there's an element of shame that you mentioned. Like, I'm in this relationship and I feel really weak or really ashamed. And it's having that hope that the other person's going to be different, and they will play the victim. They will absolutely be very, very good at playing the victim and projecting onto you a thread of truth about yourself. So really having a reality check, going to therapy, obviously with someone who specializes with personality disorders is great, because we need to get perspective on how
mhm,
these individuals operate. Because we can easily be, fed the line of, their plight in
mhm.
life, you know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So just kind of wrapping up here, and obviously, you guys, this is not medical advice. This is just, for our podcast between us, me and Dr. Rafa. And so definitely, if you're going through anything, definitely see a therapist or somebody or a doctor who can help you. But in this instance, if somebody's suffering right now and they need to get away, I've heard the term gray rock.
Mm-hmm.
If you can explain that and what are some other coping mechanisms, just so someone can take away from this episode.
Mm-hmm. So gray rocking is actually just not reacting. Like, so what happens is the narcissist may fly into a fit or a rage or a tirade, and it's so hard, but you cannot react. Just act like a gray rock. Like, you really just sit kind of still, don't react, because as soon as you react, that person is going to make it all about you. And
Hmm.
it's like a temper tantrum, like a kid having a temper tantrum. Like, just physically leaving the space is good, going outside, going for a car ride, getting in the other room, unless
Hmm.
that person follows you. But it's trying really hard not to get triggered in that moment, taking a deep breath.
Yeah.
um, is really good, because the gaslighting occurs too. And that's when the narcissist makes you feel like you're going crazy, like you're doubting your own sense of reality.
Yeah.
Um, so having physical boundaries is very important, I think. Emotional ones as well. Just like, oh, here he or she goes again with that tirade. I'm just going to sit here and let it just play out, and
Yeah.
then wait till that person calms down, and not feeding the truth
Yeah.
into their truth as your own truth, because that's their narrative, to
Yeah.
feed their ego. Because if they put you down, then they feel better.
Yeah. That's where they get their supply. So
It is like a supply. Yep. They need an audience, but I'll tell you, like, one of the things they have is deep seated shame and insecurity underneath all of it. It's all
oh,
smoke and mirrors, you
yeah.
know? Yeah.
And the funny part is they usually have a pretty high position, or they're owner of a business or a doctor or lawyer or somebody in power in a corporation. And you
Yeah.
have to have these traits to run these places. And sad.
Right. It comes in handy to a degree, I guess, with not having empathy. I don't know. But it's just when you're in a relationship, some people have to quit a job.
Mhm.
I've had people who had to cut off their family members. Like, I've had patients never talk to their parent ever again,
Wow,
ever. Yeah.
that's got to be tough.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. But there are resources out there, like you
Yeah.
mentioned. Hmm.
Yeah. And speaking of, what I tell a lot of my clients that I coach, always be learning. There's a lot of YouTube videos out there. Obviously, the work that you do, people that know about narcissism. I want to mention one particular book by Dr. Alba Raffaella. She's a psychologist, amazing author. You need guys to check it out. It's on Amazon right now, but there's tons of resources out there, but that's one I recommend personally. But Dr. Rafa, what do you think about, if there's any type of resources or centers, or what's your take on all that?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the books because I always recommend books to people. And I think the memoirs are really good, personal stories, especially with those of us in the field, giving their personal account. It gives some credibility that it isn't just, common people, whatever, non-psychologists. I don't mean that. Just that people who are not in the field, like anybody can get duped, and hearing it, like, wow, even a doctor can get, manipulated by these individuals. Those are always really good. There's another book called The Wizard of Oz, Another Narcissist. I always recommend that book. The woman who wrote that book has, I think she might have a forum to go to. Like there's different blogs and forums. And now that we have the internet, like you said, people are coming out and speaking so much more. There's a lot of resources.
And I believe that Breaking the Mirror, that's on Amazon as well. So you guys, if you're listening, check that out. If you get a really good read. So Dr. Rafa, it's always a pleasure having you. And there's a reason why I asked you back. You are the elite. You know your stuff. You've helped so many people. And you're a clinical director, psychologist, and the way you come across, I don't feel like I'm speaking to just like a psychologist. You're very easy to talk to. And I wish I had that as I was growing up, because unless you're trained in this special field, it's very hard to kind of resonate with your client. You have to go through it, I feel. But what is your take on that? You think?
Yeah, I think it definitely helps, when people hear about you've been through it too, maybe not being specific, but just saying, look, I get it. I know people who act this way. So it helps them to learn to set boundaries and to follow your lead and know that you really know what they're going through, and you can be empathetic to how they feel, because again, you don't have to go to someone who's actually been through it, but chances are those of us that are therapists have had something in our history to make us become psychologists. So.
All right. Well, there you have it. Thank you so much for being on my episode. I really appreciate it. You're always welcome back. So guys, we're starting the Elite series. Look out for these podcast episodes. These are the best, cream of the crop, best in their fields. And Dr. Rafa, you fall in that. So with that said, stay tuned for the next episode. And I will be having more episodes coming your way. All the information will be in the bio. So all the links for the books and everything. So go look for that. With that said, we are out.
You're listening to the On Call Empath